Welcome to the Nobel Prize Ceremony 2020, a year that will go down in Nobel history as an exception due to COVID, of course. Stockholm City Hall, which is normally the venue for the Nobel banquet, is now the stage for this year's slightly different prize ceremony. And we will be meeting now our host, Stefan Forsberg, the Executive Director of the Stockholm Concert Hall, where the prize ceremony normally is held on this day, the 10th of December, Nobel Day.
December 10, how that date resonates within the world of science and humanism. Welcome to the Nobel Day and to the grand finale of the Nobel period that started already in October when the names of the laureates became official. And here we are, standing in the beautiful Stockholm City Hall, or more precisely in the Golden Hall, one of the most exquisite venues in the world. And this is actually where the Nobel Day ends for the laureates, because the Nobel Day starts at another fantastic venue, the Stockholm Concert Hall, home of the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra, and also the venue where I normally work as executive and artistic director. And there, on the grand podium, are the Nobel laureates receiving the Nobel medals and diplomas from the hands of His Majesty, the King. But unfortunately, not this year. And I will come back to that a bit later on. There are, though, some ingredients that always are present at the ceremony, and one of them is music. And when we today are honoring the greatest minds within science and humanism, what could be a better way doing so than with music by one of the greatest composers ever walked on planet Earth, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So please enjoy the wonderful soprano Elisabeth Meyer in the aria Ruhe sanft from Mozart's opera Saide. Earlier, I mentioned that music is an ingredient at the ceremony. The welcome speech by today's host is, however, a cornerstone at the ceremony. It is my great honor to welcome to the podium the chairman of the board of the Nobel Foundation, Professor Carl-Henrik Heldin.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen around the world. On behalf of the Nobel Foundation, it's a great honor for me to welcome you to this year's Nobel Award ceremony. It is gratifying that during a year when the humanity has been subjected to such major hardships, new Nobel laureates could be announced this October. And we are glad that we have been able to bring the Nobel Prize medals and diplomas to you, Nobel laureates, in your home countries, when it was not possible for you to come to us here in Stockholm. Nevertheless, you will be honored and celebrated here today in the City Hall. The Nobel Prize shows humanity's ability to constantly find solutions to difficult challenges that we face. This year, when we are all deeply affected by the corona pandemic, it feels especially important to highlight scientific, literary, and humanitarian efforts that inspire us and gives us hope for the future. The ongoing pandemic has reminded us that the conditions for our lives can very quickly change dramatically. We have also been reminded of the importance of science to solve severe problems. Only by understanding the coronavirus, how it infects people, and the mechanisms whereby it causes disease in patients, can we combat the COVID-19 disease. With an impressive speed, the scientific community has joined forces to answer these questions. A pandemic shows no borders. And this year we have seen how important research and international cooperation are to find solutions to global problems. Earlier today in Oslo, the World Food Programme was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its effort to combat hunger. Again, we are reminded that global problems can only be addressed efficiently by global cooperation. Over the last 120 years, Nobel Prizes have been awarded to persons who have made important discoveries about ourselves and the world around us. Today, we celebrate scientific achievements which spans from discoveries that protect us from infection and death by another virus, the hepatitis C virus, and that has taught us about dark holes in the universe, to the development of an efficient method to change DNA, and to new formats for auctions. We also celebrate poetry that with austere beauty makes individual existence universal. These achievements are well within line of the vision of Alfred Nobel to honor those who has made the greatest benefit to humankind. I welcome you all to today's Nobel Prize Award ceremony. Thank you.
Due to the situation in the world, are there only a handful of people present live here in the Stockholm City Hall today? And we are therefore deeply grateful to His Majesty the King and Her Majesty the Queen that they instead have invited all of us to the Royal Palace. So please join me in a digital journey to our beautiful palace. And dear laureate, it is an honor for me introducing you to His Majesty the King.
Esteemed Nobel laureates, wherever you are in the world, I hope that this message from the Royal Palace in Stockholm finds you well. This is indeed a different Nobel Prize ceremony at the end of a very different year. The global pandemic has affected the whole world. It presents new challenges for individuals and societies, and it has also shone a light on the important role of science. While countries have been focused to close their borders, scientists around the world have been working together like never before to understand the COVID-19 virus and to develop a vaccine. At a time like this, it feels more important than ever to celebrate those who, in the words of the great donor Alfred Nobel, have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. Esteemed laureates, I offer you the warmest congratulations on your outstanding contribution. And I very much hope to see you here in Stockholm in the future. So, very welcome.
You will now meet another fantastic musician, Mr. Magnus Lindgren. He moves freely within the world of music, both as an instrumentalist and as a composer. And he has today composed a brand new piece for you, reflecting on the times we now are experiencing, a darker present time, but looking forward to a brighter future. And he has called the piece 2021. I don't know how many compositions have already been dedicated to you, but dear laureates, this one is for you. This year's Nobel Prize award ceremony will of course be very different. But the Nobel Foundation has been very determined that there has to be a ceremony also this year. The Nobel medals and diplomas have already been presented by various Swedish diplomatic missions around the world, and we have, of course, made sure that these great moments have been filmed. But one thing will be performed live here in Stockholm: the introductory speeches held by professors from the prize-awarding institutions. And we will now start the actual prize award ceremony by honoring the laureates in physics. It is my great honor to welcome to the podium Professor Ulf Danielsson from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen. This year's laureates have made groundbreaking discoveries concerning the most mythical and strange objects in physics, black holes. Black holes are bodies with gravity so strong that not even light can escape. To create a black hole, the Earth would have to be squeezed down to the size of a pea, and the Sun compressed into a sphere comparable in size to the central parts of Stockholm. The first speculation that such a thing could exist in our universe dates back to the end of the 18th century, but it was not until Einstein had presented his general theory of relativity in 1915 that one had a theory powerful enough to describe them. According to Einstein's theory of gravity, time and gravity are intimately connected. Time goes by a trillionth of a second slower at my feet than at my head. Although the difference is small, it gives rise to what we call gravity. It is strange that only by lifting a glass of water with my own hand can I feel this small difference in the passage of time. At the horizon of a black hole, on the other hand, gravity is so strong that time seems to stand still. And within the horizon, time curves so that it points inward toward the center of the black hole. Anyone who is unlucky enough to fall into a black hole therefore has as much difficulty getting out again as traveling back in time. And in the middle of the black hole, in the unfortunate traveler's near future, lurks the singularity, where the known laws of nature cease to apply. Black holes are truly the most extreme objects in physics. But the mathematics of the general theory of relativity is difficult, and for a long time, black holes were mere speculation. And many physicists, for good reasons, doubted their existence. Not even Einstein thought they could exist. It was only in 1965, half a century after Einstein formulated his theory, that Roger Penrose was able to master the mathematics and show that black holes are an inevitable consequence of general relativity. If matter accumulates densely enough, nothing can prevent a collapse into a black hole. But where are they? For a long time, it was suspected that black holes could hide in the center of many galaxies, where they could explain eruptions of extreme energy. Could there perhaps also be a black hole in the center of our own galaxy, the Milky Way? Reinhard Genzel and Andrea Ghez used powerful telescopes to study the mysterious interior of the Milky Way. The heart of our galaxy is hidden inside a cloud of dust, and it is only by using infrared light that one can discern what is going on. With the help of the instruments they developed, they were able to follow the motions of individual stars and discover how these stars revolved around something they could not see. Calculations show that the invisible object must have a mass about 4 million times that of the Sun, within the framework of current theories, there is no other explanation than a black hole. A more than 200-year-old riddle has been solved. But black holes also mark the limit of our knowledge of the physical world. As we look into the dark abysses of black holes, there may be new secrets to reveal. Professors Penrose, Gensel, and Gees, you have been awarded the 2020 Nobel Prize in Physics for your outstanding contributions to our understanding of black holes. It is an honor and privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations.
And Roger Penrose, born in England 1931, will receive the prize here at the residence of the Swedish ambassador Torbjörn Solström. Roger Penrose in London. In Munich, at the Bayerische Staatskanzlei, we have the ambassador Per Töresson handing over the medal to Reinhard Genz. And in Los Angeles, in the garden of the laureate, Lars-Erik Pudre, Consul of the Swedish Embassy, is handing over the prize.
Sometimes simplicity is the best way to go when you want to create pure beauty. You will now hear a very beloved piece by the French composer Maurice Ravel. It's from his Sonatine, originally composed for solo piano, but here in a version for violin, cello, and guitar. We will now continue the ceremony by honoring the laureates in chemistry. It is my great honor to welcome to the podium Professor Carl Gustafsson from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen. The fertilized egg cell contains all the information needed to create a human being. And this information is stored in our genetic material, our DNA. In 1953, Jim Watson and Francis Crick reported a simple structural model for DNA, which immediately suggested how the DNA molecule could store genetic information and how this information can be passed on to the next generation of cells. What the DNA structure did not explain was how the genetic information can be used to give rise to proteins, the main components of human tissues. A breakthrough came on Good Friday, 1960, when a group of international scientists gathered for an informal meeting at King's College in Cambridge. The group included Sidney Brenner, Francis Crick, and Francois Jacob, who all later became Nobel Prize laureates. During the meeting, Jacob described the latest results from the work carried out at the Institut Pasteur in Paris. The information provided had an almost seismic effect on Brenner and Crick, who jumped to their feet. They both instantaneously realized the importance of the French findings for their own work. At that very moment, they understood that the DNA must first be copied into RNA, which in turn functions as a template for protein synthesis. As so many times before and after, the free exchange of ideas and information between international scientists led to an important breakthrough. Today we celebrate another scientific breakthrough resulting from an international collaboration between a French scientist working in the northern part of Sweden and an American scientist based in sunny California. Ever since the early pioneers described the nature of the genetic material, scientists have tried to develop technologies that can manipulate DNA sequences of cells and organisms. With the discovery of the CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors, Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna now has provided us with such a tool. As so often in science, the discovery of these genetic scissors was unexpected. During Charpentier's studies of a harmful bacterium, the Streptococcus pyogenes, she discovered a previously unknown molecule termed, which she called tracer RNA. Her work showed that tracer RNA is a part of an ancient bacterial immune system, CRISPR-Cas, that protects the bacterium from invading viruses by cleaving the viral DNA. How this cleavage was accomplished was demonstrated a year later when Charpentier and Doudna together succeeded in recreating the bacteria's genetic scissors in the test tube. In a series of crucial experiments, the two scientists set out to simplify and reprogram the genetic scissors. In the natural form, the scissors recognize DNA from viruses. But Charpentier and Doudna proved that the scissors could be controlled so that they can cut any DNA molecule at a predetermined site. Where the DNA is cut, it is then easy to introduce new genetic information and thereby rewrite the code of life. Since Charpentier and Doudna discovered the CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors in 2012, their use has increased exponentially. This tool has contributed to many important discoveries in basic science. In plant research, scientists have been able to develop crops with new and desired properties. In medicine, Clinical trials of new cancer therapies are underway, and the dream of being able to cure inherited diseases is about to come true. Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna, your studies of CRISPR-Cas9, of the CRISPR-Cas9 genetic scissors, have taken the molecular life sciences into a new epoch and are bringing a great benefit to humankind in many ways. That is a truly great achievement. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Science, it is my great privilege and honor to convey to you our warmest congratulations.
Emmanuel Charpentier, born in France 1968, will receive the medal and diploma at the residence of the Swedish ambassador in Berlin. And in Berkeley, Jennifer Doudna will receive her prize in the garden of, well, in her garden, in her own garden. About the fact that this year's chemistry prize is awarded to 2 women, Doudna said she hopes to see the day when 2 women getting the prize is not a notable fact.
Le ciel bleu sur nous peut s'effondrer et la terre peut bien s'écrouler. Peu m'importe si tu m'aimes, je me fous du monde entier. Tant que l'amour inondera mon matin, tant que mon corps frémira sous ta main, peu m'importe le problème, mon amour, puisque tu m'aimes. J'irai jusqu'au bout du monde, je me ferai tendre blonde si tu me le demandais. J'irai décrocher la lune, j'irai voler la fortune si tu me le demandais. Je renierai ma patrie, je renierai mes amis si tu me le demandais. Un peu bien rire de moi, je ferai n'importe quoi si tu me le demandais. Si un jour la vie t'arrache à moi, si tu meurs, que tu sois loin de moi, peu m'importe si tu m'aimes, car moi je mourrai aussi. Nous aurons pour nous l'éternité dans le bleu de toute l'immensité, dans le ciel, plus de problèmes.
Edith Piaf, Hymne à l'amour.
Amazing Edda Magnusson in Edith Piaf's signature song, Hymne à l'amour. We will now continue the ceremony by honoring the laureates in physiology or medicine. It is my great honor to welcome to the podium Professor Gunilla Carlsson Hedestam from the Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institutet.
Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Viruses have always been part of our existence. Through evolution, we have acquired versatile functions to handle invading pathogens. This has equipped us with a finely tuned, and in most cases, highly effective immune system that protects us against daily threats. Different kinds of life forms, bacteria, plants, animals, and different species of these have their own unique set of viral intruders that infect them and circulate within the given population. But new threats continuously arise. Viruses often cross species barriers to increase their host range and spread more effectively, as this is their sole reason to exist. While we cannot see viruses with the naked eye, we know that they come in many different shapes and forms, and they frequently take us by surprise. This year, the world is facing a viral pandemic that affects almost every aspect of our society. The expeditious identification of the causative agent of this pandemic, SARS-CoV-2, was unprecedented, and our understanding of the virus and the disease it causes is increasing by the day. Progress towards the goal of containing the pandemic is now being made. Hosting this year's Nobel Prize ceremony in the absence of the laureates is one of many consequences of the pandemic, but one which also highlights the significance of this year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, the discovery of the hepatitis C virus, a major human pathogen, and the causative agent of a much more long-lasting and invisible pandemic. The work performed by the laureates spans several decades and illustrates the importance of scientific collaboration and systematic experimentation using both traditional and emerging technologies. The starting point was the observation that an increasing number of individuals who had received blood transfusions developed chronic liver inflammation years later. The clinical course of this disease was different from that observed with the known hepatitis viruses. This was a silent condition which rarely gave symptoms in the acute phase of the infection, but which resulted in progressive damage of the liver over time in almost all infected people. Dr. Harvey Alter set out to investigate this new disease. Through carefully designed studies of samples from blood donors and individuals who had developed this form of hepatitis, he could lay the puzzle. In 1978, Alter demonstrated formally that the disease was transmissible, and the race to identify the causative infectious agent could start. Around this time, molecular biology-based techniques were becoming increasingly available, but they were nowhere near as efficient as they are today. Dr. Michael Horton and his team set out to clone the unknown virus using an entirely novel screening technique. Almost against all odds, given the limitations of the techniques at the time, the screen was successful and identified hepatitis C virus. Dr. Charlie Rice immediately embarked on studies to define how the virus copies itself in our cells to make new infectious particles. By defining the fine details of this process, he could generate a virus clone that alone induced productive infection and liver disease. This was the final evidence that hepatitis C virus alone caused this form of hepatitis. The discovery of the hepatitis C virus by this year's laureates laid the foundation for our current understanding about how this virus survives in its niche during the long chronic phase of the infection. And importantly, it led to the development of highly effective antiviral medicines that now cure the infection in almost all treated individuals. This year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine puts viruses at center stage. Viruses will continue to surprise us. They exploit different routes of transmission, and they are masters at adaptation to ensure their own persistence. To be prepared for new viral threats, we need research, such as that performed by this year's laureates, and we need a deep appreciation for the fundamental aspects of different classes of viruses and how they interact with their hosts. Dear Professors Alter, Houghton and Rice, on behalf of the Nobel Assembly of Karolinska Institutet, it's my great privilege to convey to you our warmest congratulations.
Harvey Alter is receiving the prize in Washington, D.C., handed over by the Swedish ambassador, Karin Olofsdotter, at the National Institutes of Health. We have now moved to the garden of Michael Houghton in Danville, California. In New York, at the residence of the Swedish Consul General Annika Rembe, we have Charles Rice receiving his part of the prize.
As a humble worker within the wonderful world of arts, is it always a special moment when the Nobel laureate in literature is being announced? It is my great honor to welcome onto the podium Professor Anders Olsson from the Swedish Academy.
Eders Majestäter, ärade pristagare, mina damer och herrar. Allt får en ny innebörd i efterhand. I den amerikanska poeten Louise Glicks verk Faithful and Virtuous Night från 2014 finns en dikt mitt i boken som heter Afterword. Den utgör ett avbrott där den som för ordet tar en paus för att läsa om det han har skrivit. Den som talar i dikten är en äldre målare som befinner sig vid en kritiska punkt där hans pensel stelnar vid anblicken av kaos och där han måste göra upp med föreställningen om att ha ett öde. Han talar om den upphöjda ensamheten hos filosofen Immanuel Kant på väg till broarna i Königsberg. I en parentes tillägger han, vi har samma födelsedag. Om man ser efter föddes Louise Glick på samma dag som Kant, den 22 april. Och Kants teman är också hennes. Såväl det sublima, vår fångenskap i våra föreställningar, som vår svårighet att gripa det verkliga. Den skrivande målaren är en tunn mask som diktaren talar igenom. Louise Glicks dikter är skrivna i efterhand. Barndomen och de nära relationerna till föräldrar och syskon är en motivkrets som aldrig har lämnat henne i fred. Hon har skrivit 12 diktsamlingar och ett par volymer med essäer om poesi, och alla kännetecknas av en vilja att komma till klarhet. Ingen kan vara hårdare än hon mot jagets illusioner. Även om det självbiografiska stoffet är viktigt är Glick knappast någon bekännande poet. Den sanning hon söker måste ta omvägar över fantasin och andras röster som målaren i Afterword för att framträda. I flera av sina verk talar Glick genom mytologiska gestalter som Dido, Persefone eller Eurydike. De är masker som förvandlar det mest akut personliga till något lika allmängiltigt som dubbelbottnat. Detta poetiska språk har en av sina förutsättningar i jagets splittring, som den röda vallmon vittnar om i samlingen The Wild Iris från 1992. In truth, I am speaking now the way you are. I speak because I am shattered. Hos Louise Glick kan två stridande sanningar dela på det sista ordet. Och det är just vad som sker i dikten Afterword. Shall I be raised from death? The spirit asks. And the sun says yes. And the desert answers, your voice is sand scattered in wind. Vid sidan om den klassiska mytvärlden är den rika engelskspråkiga dikttraditionen Glicks främsta litterära källa. Det kan vara vad hon har kallat det inre lyssnandet hos John Keats, den solitära uppfordrande rösten hos Emily Dickinson eller det angelägna tilltalet hos T.S. Eliot. Hon dras till en intima röst som inbjuder till delaktighet. Viktig är hennes upptäckt hur hon kunde göra poesi av sitt eget talspråk i samlingen Ararat från 1990. Där möter oss nästan brutalt öppenhjärtiga bilder ur familjelivet, befriade från allt poetiskt utanverk. Samtidigt har hon erövrat en suverän känsla för hur dikten och diktsamlingen som helhet är uppbyggd. Louise Glick är inte bara motsättningarnas och den kärva klarsynens diktare. Hon är också förnyelsens poet som få andra. Och även om dikten är skriven i efterhand och tycks förbunden med det äppelträd som en gång sågs i barndomen, är förändring ett av hennes nyckelord. Hon lär oss att förnyelsens ögonblick sammanfaller med ordens ankomst. Hennes inre drivkraft är en ostillbar hunger och en utomordentlig tilltro till poesins möjligheter. Hon kan ta förnyelsens språng med eftertänksamma parabler, med en till synes självklar diktion, men också med komik och bitande kvickhet. Och när Louise Glück i sin sena dikt konfronterar det ofrånkomliga slutet finns det en förunderlig gras och lätthet i hennes anslag. Det är en ton som länge dröjer kvar och som kan bära också oss läsare vidare. Dear Louise Glück, on behalf of the Swedish Academy, it is my privilege to convey to you our warmest congratulations to the Nobel Prize in Literature 2020.
Anders Olsson of the Swedish Academy cited from one of her most lauded collections, Wild Iris, and said that change is a key word in her poetry. And here, Louise Glück is receiving the prize in her own garden in Boston. Behind the mask in the picture to the right there was the Swedish ambassador.
At night when everything is quiet, this old house seems to breathe a sigh. Sometimes I hear a neighbor snoring. Sometimes I hear a baby cry. Sometimes I hear a staircase creaking. Sometimes a distant telephone. Quiet settles down again. The house and I are all alone. Lonely house, lonely me. Funny with so many neighbors, how lonely it can be. Lonely street, lonely town. Funny, you can be so lonely with all these folks around. I guess there must be something I don't comprehend. Sparrows have companions, even stray dogs find a friend. The night for me is not romantic. Unhook the stars and take them down. I'm lonely in this lonely house. In this lonely town.
almost 8 billion people living on the planet, and suddenly is a small virus forcing most of us into some kind of loneliness. This was Kurt Weill's thoughts about loneliness in his song, Lonely House. We will now continue the ceremony by honoring the laureates in economic sciences. It is my great honor to welcome to the podium Professor Tommy Andersson from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Most of us have similar morning routines. We wake up, prepare our morning coffee, and have something to eat. During breakfast, we scroll through social media on our cell phones and search the internet for the latest news. What we don't normally think about is that auctions influence every step of this simple morning routine. The cost of the electricity to brew our morning coffee was decided by an auction. Which advertisements we are exposed to on the internet was decided by an auction. The price our telecom operators pay to use radio frequencies, and thus what it costs us to surf the web, was decided by an auction. Each day, auctions transfer astronomical amounts between buyers and sellers. But it's not only their scope and size that are the reasons for investigating how auctions work. Different sellers have different objectives, from revenue to public welfare. How should you design an electricity auction that both provides electricity in the short run and make sure that there is enough investments to secure future electricity supply? How should auctions for carbon emission allowances be designed to create incentives for firms to invest in green energy? To answer questions like this, we must understand how different auction formats shape bidding and final prices. In the 1960s, Robert Wilson provided a theory for auctions of objects with a common value, a value which is uncertain beforehand, but in the end is the same to all bidders. Most auctions have a common value. For example, the amount of minerals in the ground. Because it is difficult to estimate this common value, the winner of an auction may overpay and therefore become a loser, a phenomenon known as the winner's curse. In the 1980s, Paul Milgrom extended and generalized Wilson's theory to include both common and private values. Thanks to the laureates, most standard auction formats are now well understood. In the beginning of the 1990s, cell phones and internet became parts of our daily lives. As a consequence, the demand for radio frequencies skyrocketed. Traditional methods for allocating radio spectrum, such as lotteries and different administrative procedures, were inefficient. And unfortunately, also the standard auction formats were inefficient. Would it be possible to design an auction that avoids the winner's curse and generates high revenue to the government, while at the same time benefiting the end users as they browse the news at their breakfast tables? The first auction format that accomplished this task relied on basic research by Milgrom and Wilson. But it was also designed by them. This auction format has now been used in around 100 countries around the world to allocate radio spectrum. Dear Professors Milgrom and Wilson. Your research has helped us to understand how auctions work. Like few other economists, you have crossed disciplinary boundaries, drawing on mathematical sciences, behavioral sciences, and computer science. But you have also brought theory to practice. The auction formats analyzed and designed by you and your colleagues are now being used all over the world to sell fishing quotas, emission allowances, financial assets, radio spectrum, and many, many more objects. Thanks to your research, resources are now being more efficiently allocated to the benefit of the buyers, the sellers, the taxpayers, the end users, and the society as a whole. It is an honor and a privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations.
Now we'll go to the garden of one of this year's economics laureates. And Robert Wilson and Paul Milgram, they actually live close next to each other on the same street. Milgram is one of Professor Wilson's former students, and well, Wilson has other students who have received the Nobel Prize, such as Bengt Holmström and Al Roth previously. But today it's Mr. Wilson's turn.
The 2020 Nobel Prize award ceremony has come to an end. And from Stockholm, we once again would like to express our warmest congratulations to you, dear laureates, wherever you are around the world. For the finale, the artistic director of this ceremony, Mr. Linus Fellbom, wanted to find out a little bit more about your musical taste, dear laureates. That was, though, a bit tricky. But finally, we found that one of you is a David Bowie fan. And to be honest, who isn't? So we will end this ceremony with David Bowie's Heroes, because that is what you are to us, heroes, for all the great things you are doing for mankind. Thank you, and once again, congratulations.
I will be queen, and you'll be my king. Though nothing will drive them away, or we can beat them just for one day. We can be heroes just for one day. And you can be mean. And I drink all the time, 'cause we're lovers, and that is a fact. Yes, we're lovers, and that is that. And nothing will keep us together. We could steal time just for one day. We can be heroes forever and I wish you could swim like dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together, we could beat them forever and ever. We can be heroes just for one day. What you say?
Fantastic interpretation of David Bowie's Heroes, performed by Edda Magnusson. And the laureate who has David Bowie as a favorite artist? Well, that's Andrea Ghez, who used to listen to music all night in her observatory to keep her awake. This closes this year's Nobel Prize ceremony. Thanks from Stockholm, and hope to see you here again, especially you laureates, in person next year. Let's hope that then everything will be as usual again. Thank you for being with us today, and take care.